Good morning. Welcome to Adaptive Chicago Productions. On this bright sunny Wednesday morning, June 25th, 2025, the eve of my 72nd birthday. And and welcome to my guest here, Robert Hansen, on the Adaptive Chicago Production Show. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Hi, how you doing, Kenny?
Fine, thanks for asking. Now, simply tell the public, our viewing public, a little bit about yourself in your own words, what you want us to know.
All right, well, I've been all around the ups and downs and the ins and outs and everything. I've been, working as a substitute teacher for CPS, Chicago Public Schools, for like 6, coming up on 7 years. I graduated from Northeastern Illinois University like 11 years ago. I was an older, I guess, they like to label things, so I was like a non-traditional student, meaning, I went to school a little later in life, and, it was a positive experience for me. And, as a blind person, sometimes, we get marginalized, and some of us have to, overcome things, and sometimes it takes longer for us to get things done. And, I worked at an airline. I worked for a person in the vending stand program, and, there was just, all kinds of different experiences.
Actually, it's funny that you should say that about, being a blind person and how things don't always get done. But yes, there have been, my brother, Randy, who is also blind, has worked in the, for 25 years, or no, 27 years. He worked at the University of Buffalo in Buffalo, New York as Higher Education Disability Services Director. And he told me that. He said, college students are not all fresh right out of high school.
No.
They've had lots of college students that were older, and some of them, there were many of them where, their kids were already grown and stuff like that, and they didn't have a chance to fuel their sense of adventure while their children were young and growing up, and they yearned to do that. And so that became a situation, and as a matter of fact, I believe 2 or 3 years before he retired, a blind lady who was in University of Buffalo.
Wow.
And he called and told me about it the day after the graduation. And I was, I'm glad that that's happened, because, that's something it's a good conversational piece that, she can talk about that does assist in educating the public. Because really, we don't educate the public directly. We do it through people that we know who are aware of the things that we've done, and then they talk about it amongst people that they are friends and relatives of that don't even know us. So that's, what the situation is there. So you said you worked for CPS for 7 years now.
Coming up on, yeah.
Wow. I mean, those years fly by, don't they? I mean,
Uh,
I can't believe it's been that long.
I mean, I remember when I started I started like in December of 2018, and I worked like a couple weeks before the Christmas break, and like those kids were all. I was just thinking because I'd seen a news story about some 12th grade, some seniors in high school in another city, how they made videos of themselves, and they were in like 6th grade, and I thought, they were talking to they were responding to their child self. Now they're like 18 years old, and I thought, man, when I was like starting this job, these were 6th graders, and it's like, God, now they're gonna graduate, and it's like, if I would have been a teacher for say 30 years, just think of all the kids, and you think, like let's say you start when you were like, let's say you start being a teacher in like 1995 when you're like 25 years old, and you think, you're teaching 6th grade math, and you think, those, what are they, like usually about 12 years old back then, and now there's those same kids, you see them, they're like 41, 42 years old, and they probably have like kids in high school by now. It's like you'd think, dang, those kids were little kids back in the day. I mean, we don't think about it, but people just they just grow. Like, you don't think about it, and it's like, well, I knew you when you were in 4th grade, and now you're 40 years old or whatever, and not, it's like, and I was your math teacher, and I'm still a math teacher, and I got, I mean, it amazes me that time flies by so fast.
It's and a lot changes over a period of time, and I know because for having been to several high school class reunions myself, some of our teachers have come back to see us and have been very impressed with how we have changed and how the world around us has changed and how we changed with it. As a matter of fact, I have a beer glass at home in my cabinet that I got from my world history teacher, Karen Button. She gave us she gave all of our class a beer glass at our last class reunion, and that she's doing very well. She and her husband are retired and living in South Florida now, and living it up on the sandy beaches and everything. But yeah, I'm gonna protect that glass with everything I've got because it's of sentimental value.
Yeah. I mean, it just, I mean, and it kind of puts things in perspective, because it's like I've had a couple other jobs where I've had them for a number of, like 2-3 years or whatever, but this is like the second time in life that I've actually held the same kind of work for multiple years like this, and it's nice to know that I've got some employment, and I look forward to working all year, and I look forward to the summertime off and just goofing around and relaxing and just enjoying my time off. And when it's time to go back to work, then I set the alarm and start getting out of bed at 5:45 in the morning, and it takes a couple of days to get used to getting on a routine like that. And now that I'm getting a little older, sometimes I wake up at 3 in the morning, and sometimes I gotta decide, well, do I stay up a little later? Do I go to bed at 10 o'clock? Or but getting activity throughout the day and exercising and getting a good night's sleep and all things like that.
Well, it takes some getting used to, and as Olivia Newton-John used to say in one of her songs, one of her famous songs, you listen to your body talk.
Yeah.
And yeah, your body talks loudly when you get older.
Yeah.
But and another thing is, and I don't know if you've worked as a substitute teacher long enough to reap the rewards yet, but the rewards that I'm talking about is it's like you'll see the kids whose you might see the kids whose lives you've touched and and stuff like that, and it will be, you know, it will be a rewarding. It will be rewarding. Say maybe, you know, say you're what, 55 years old now.
About that,
Okay,
yeah.
you know, 10, 15 years from now, some guy's going to come up, some young guy or young woman's going to come up to you and say, yeah, yeah, you know, Mr. Hansen, I remember you the first year that you were a substitute school teacher, and I want you to know I have a PhD in astrophysics, and I'm working at such and such a place, and it's going to make you feel real good, because you're like, wow, you know, I really touched this person's life, and that's how they know they could come to me and tell me, you know, what they've achieved.
Yeah, you know, I remember the first few months, you know, the first few days, you know, they don't teach you this, but you kind of learn over time. But I used to kind of be a taskmaster when I started, and over time I just, you know, it was aggravating on me, and it added a lot of stress. So eventually I just kind of learned to relax and learn different approaches from different people, and not to bark at people. And you know, a lot of new people that I've talked to that are new to this kind of work, you know, because sometimes when you get older, you just don't have a choice, because maybe you didn't have the fancy pants career that other people have
Right.
developed over the past, like throughout your working age life. So, you know, I mean, I've told a couple of people that have started this job, it's just eventually a lot of the days go in one ear and out the other ear. When I was new at it, things used to aggravate me all the time, you know, and it's like now, you know, I don't worry about it. It's routine. You know, I get up, you know, I get to where I do my morning thing, have my egg sandwich and my coffee, or my grapes and cherries, or my chocolate milk, or whatever, you know, whatever it is I do in the morning. I get to work, I swipe in, you know, and I go to the classrooms that I'm supposed to go to. You know, it's routine, but in a lot of ways, you know, because I'm familiar with what I'm supposed to be doing, and you know, I'm familiar with the structure of the place, the schedule, you know what the expectations are.
Well, you know, I mean, and it is a live and learn process, and there could be a combination of things that you found aggravating, and you know, when you're new on the job, there were things that you probably didn't anticipate, but as far as being a taskmaster is concerned, I mean, there are going to be, you know, the kids are individuals, they're all different, and some of them, I mean, from some of the phone conversations we've had, certainly some of those kids gave you reason to be a taskmaster, and some of them will give you reason again.
And you got the attention seekers, you know.
Right.
And sometimes I'm a sucker for the attention seekers, like, and I have to be, you know, be mindful of that. Like, you know, they'll play their music, and then I'll walk over, and then when I walk away, they boop, turn the music up, and then they turn it down real quick, and then turn it up, you know, and it's like some things enter my mind. It's like these kids being an attention seeker. You know, they know they're going to pull my chain, so I got to remember not to let that get under my skin.
Yeah, but well, again, but so much has changed and evolved over the years. I mean, you know, the certainly, I mean, I'm telling you from the standpoint of somebody who's going to be 72 years old tomorrow. You know, I grew up at a time where there was corporal punishment at home, and there was corporal punishment at school, and you might get corporal punishment from a neighbor. And if you did something that your parents weren't aware of, and you got the corporal punishment from your neighbor, and your neighbor made your parents aware of what you got the corporal punishment from them for, and you got the corporal punishment from your parents, again.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened at school. If you got corporal punishment at school and then you got it again when you got home,
Man,
you know, how did I find out what happened at school? You know.
And it's like you get a weapon 4 times in a day if you're lucky.
Oh yeah, you know, and it's and of course now that's not happening anymore, you know, because of the, you know, latest research that has been done. But I mean, I was like, because I recall when I went on the 16th of last month, I got together with a bunch of people I went to high school with, and we went to the House of Pizza in Hammond, Indiana, on Indianapolis Boulevard. And one of my high school classmates who picked me up at the train station in East Chicago, Indiana, he was telling me about his granddaughter had just turned 4 years old. And he was telling me, and of course she's the youngest of 2 kids. Her older brother, his grandson, had just turned 6 in March. And he was talking about how, he thought it was the cutest thing there was that his granddaughter goes and gets the step stool out of the closet, and she climbs up it and gets into the cabinet and gets the chips out and everything like that. And he said, it's really weird, but her brother won't do that. Her brother asks for permission, you know, and everything like that. And I'm like, but that's a rule that should be reinforced. And he said, yeah, but you know, Kenny, I've been in the field of education for so many years, and you know I recently retired from that. And I said, yeah. He said, well, you know, latest research done is telling us now by the social science community that we have to accept our kids for who they are. And my response to him was, yes, but does accepting somebody for who they are mean you accept everything they do? You can validate who they are, but there are still some things that are not acceptable. And I reminded him, I said, see, you know, when I was a kid, I would never have dare do that. That would have been, and I said, oh no, I would have gotten corporal punishment for that. He says, at the age of 4? I said, yes. And he said, well, he thought it was cute that his granddaughter did that. And I said, well, okay, the act in and of itself may be, but I would be worried about that. Hey, what if she gets hurt?
Yeah, that's true.
That's a little girl. She shouldn't be stepping up on that step stool.
No, and they tell you that step stools can, you know, you can trip and fall off of them.
Yeah, what if it breaks while she's climbing up it? You know, anything. Or what if she missteps and falls? So, you know, there you go. And that's the kind of thing that I would be looking at. But as time goes on, the kids are probably much less of a disciplinary problem. And as I was saying before the show, you've heard them challenge the constitutionality, haven't you?
Yeah, they take Constitution classes in 8th grade. They have to. It's, you know, state law that you have to take you study the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and then you have to take a test on it.
So they're loudly proclaiming what they don't like about what the president's doing, aren't they?
Right, yeah, they don't, a lot of the kids don't like him anyway. I've never come across a kid, you know, the vast majority of them don't like him, you know.
But yeah, because yesterday when I was at the Center on Addison and Mayor Brandon Johnson came to speak with us and talk to us about how things are progressing for the LGBTQ plus community and what he wants to do for the homelessness in this city, saying that we have a higher homelessness population than anywhere else in the country does, and he wants to change that. And you know all this stuff, and that that he said, yes, definitely getting the resources together to get so that the bus company for CTA can flourish with transportation and
Yeah.
get more jobs and everything like that. And hopefully that means an increase in a decrease rather in the unemployment rate for people with disabilities as well.
Yeah, because we're going to have to, a lot of places are going to have to go it alone while we have the Mr. Spray Tan in office. And I have, Orange Menace and, but a lot of things are going, a lot of these, the states are going to have to do things on their own, and, because, the current administration doesn't seem to care about anything except themselves, and, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. I mean, I don't know. We could come out of this thinking, maybe all that marketed nonsense that we watched on TV for years and years and listened to the radio and all, this junk is, it's cruel, it's mean. And, people have that radio on. They got that television, a certain TV news channel on all day, and they never question anything, and then they go out and sometimes you'll hear people going out and doing violent things towards other people because of some screaming meanie on television.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, we have to, get off of the nonsense, and it's really sad, but I think, it could happen, and we could just, give up a lot of the mythology and think, and kind of maybe join the rest of the world on a lot of things.
Yeah, well, I was thinking a lot about that this morning, and I wasn't eavesdropping because the guy was sitting across the aisle from me on the southbound Halstead bus coming here. But yeah, there was a man in a wheelchair boarded the southbound Halstead bus the stop after I got on, and yes, and he made a call to somebody on his cell phone, and he was on that call most of the time, trying to deal with situations, dealing with a work situation, and he's, based on the conversation I heard, he's a disabled man who is homeless,
Mm-hmm.
and everything, and he said, look, I don't care. And I mean, he told whoever it was he was talking to, look, I don't care if I have to stay in a cockroach-infested hotel for the time being. I'm not staying in that homeless shelter that I was at, because there's just too much going on.
Yeah.
You can't trust any of the staff people. You can't trust any of the inmates, and it's all going on. So, yes, as a matter of fact, I just got a bit of a warning that it's getting close to time to stop. So tell me if you have any final thoughts you want the public to know.
I'm grateful for what I have. I just, I'm glad to just keep showing up every day, and, gives me, makes me useful. I can, I get to own a home today. I get to have, a certain lifestyle that I enjoy, and just, be a part of a community. And, I hope that we don't have these drastic CTA service cuts. I think, people just have to, we're the majority of the people in this country, and, we have a right to live here and have things, and we shouldn't be punished just because of a handful of a few gazillionaire people. And
Absolutely.
they get to have, like, that one guy, one of those rich guys, he's having like a fancy wedding in Venice, Italy or somewhere, and he's got like his $500 million yacht and these A-list celebrities. It's like, come on, that's just, it's inexcusable that there are people that just, they're worth 300 billion, 400 billion. They pollute the air with their fleet of jets, and they live in like $80,000 square homes. And I mean, come on,
Really?
it's ridiculous. I've had enough of these billionaires.
You and me both.
I mean, it's just enough,
Absolutely.
And then you get people, they get up in the morning, they have to go deliver packages, and they barely get enough, they barely get paid enough to live. And you get, that employer who has who knows what they fly around in. And, it's disgusting.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. While there are so many others out there scraping by
Yeah.
with practically nothing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for being here today, and being on Adaptive Chicago Productions. And
You're glad to be here.
yes, and have a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. See you tomorrow.